Hello, my I Can Relate family. Thank you for tuning in last week to Surviving a Terrorist Attack. Today, I sit down with my best friend Alex, and we talk about our experience at university when we lived with a con artist. At the time, we didn't know they were a con artist, but unfortunately, there were many events to us figuring this out. And we've never spoken about this publicly for fear of our safety, but it's time. And it is a crazy story. It's one of those ones where I'm needing to tell you to like put your seatbelt on because the lies, the manipulation that were uncovered were huge. And it wasn't just Alex and I who experienced this. The web of people who became tangled up in his issues and his lies was widespread. He essentially told us that everyone in his life had passed away, his mom, his dad, his brother. And what we started to figure out was, and he told us this not just all in one go, but he would start saying it if someone was getting mad at him, he would, oh, well, sorry, I'm just in a bad place because my brother just died. Or if someone, for example, someone we lived with had lost her father, he cried all night with her about how he lost one of his parents too. So he used these lies to get close with people and to get empathy from them. And unfortunately, I figured it all out. I pushed that domino that uncovered it all. That put a target on my back. And he went around the university telling everyone, if you're friends with Jess, you're not friends with me. And he was charming, he was charismatic. He was in theater, so he was a great actor. So I became a hated person in the acting community, which I didn't know anyone. So, it didn't matter to me too much, but my safety mattered to me, and he took that away. I hope what you take from this episode is that gaslighting is so real, and that there are signs like someone being very charming and events not really adding up, and to trust your gut instinct because it won't lead you astray. Enjoy the episode.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
How are you? I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I've had like 5 hours of sleep. I had a bit of a fun night out last night.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not. I was just sleeping all night through. Nice.
All right then.
I know. Yeah.
So everyone, Alex and I have been best friends for the better half. Well, I mean, nine years now, so pretty much a decade. And we met at uni.
Yeah. First night in Freshers.
Yeah, first night in Freshers. Yeah. I knew we were gonna be best friends. The moment we were like singing like Britney together in halls on the table dancing. All the good times.
Young and free.
To be young and free. Oh man.
Yeah.
So today, everyone, Alex and I have been trying to do this episode for like a while, but like it's one of those things that
oh my god, it'll be like a year.
Yeah, but it's so emotionally draining to tell our story. So we actually have been putting this off because we're like, you need to be in like a good space for it.
You're in for a wild ride.
Oh, in for a wild one. So instead of today being me interviewing Alex, everyone, this is very much us telling our story. And put your seatbelt on.
Yeah.
It's a ride. So I guess where do we begin? So Alex, did you want to say, so when did we meet Sam?
So we lived in Roots. So in Roots, it was our halls, and then there were 4 flats on top of each other, and he lived in a flat above us.
Yeah.
And I can't remember like the exact first time that we met, but we used to interact with the other flats in our block. So I guess it was probably like a pre-drinks or something, but he was on the same course as a few people in our flat. So I guess that he joined on to some pre-drinks or something like that. But yeah, he was very charismatic and popular. Everyone kind of gravitated towards him. He was very fun. So I think that we got to talking probably like the first week we started uni probably.
Yeah, he was one of those people who like you just have so much fun around. Like you could tell like he was always like he was a huge character, and it shouldn't surprise you that he was in theater. And
No,
after everything we've gone through, it doesn't surprise me how good he is at acting.
no,
So
no.
it started off like a normal like relationship would, and by relationship I mean friendship. And
Yeah.
we got talking, I guess, and for some of us, like like I, for example, really bonded with him because he had told us that his mother had died and my cousin had passed away in a motorcycle accident, and we had like a drunk night of like crying about it together, and I felt like it like
Mhm.
really formed our like friendship and took it to the next level. Did you have
Yeah.
any moments like that with him as well, like where he like you emotionally felt like you connected?
He was kind of the first person at uni that I knew that was gay. So we kind of gravitated towards each other as well. And then he was a bit of a older brother kind of figure and took me under his wing and was kind of like, giving me advice. So we definitely connected over that.
Yeah. And then if we fast forward a bit, we in our second year, we decided to live together. And there were about
Yeah.
7 of us. And I feel
Mhm.
like we need to like explain our house was like this like ancient historic house that was like a
Yeah.
ghost, like it felt like ghosts were living in there. And obviously like you're a student, so like the heating was never on, except for like
No.
a little heater which I like secretly would turn on and everyone would hate me for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So it was already like the scene, like just to set the scene, it was a dark and cold place. And like Alex's room was like yours was like in the attic. It was like very
Yeah, it
scary.
was. So it was an old Victorian terrace,
Yeah.
and my room was up a back staircase off the kitchen. So it used to be a servant's room, and with it, all the rooms had fireplaces, but mine was this tiny fireplace which kind of wasn't blocked up, so the wind would come into the room. It was this. Do you remember those stairs to get up? It was like you'd hit your head. You had to duck to go crawl up the stairs.
Oh my
Um,
god.
and yeah, there was kind of a bathroom in the
Mm-hmm.
garden that you
Mm-hmm.
had to go outside to get into, and it was like people were
Yeah.
living in the basement. It was kind of
Yeah.
a creepy old house.
It was very creepy. So for
Mm.
you felt like you bonded with Sam over being gay, and didn't you guys like have like chats about because you had a crush on someone, uh,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
didn't w- on
on
Jack,
Jack.
that was it.
I became very close to Jack in first year. He was straight, and I'd never really had a straight guy friend before. I mean, we were 18, so still very young, and I never really had a really close bond with a straight guy, and we were inseparable. Literally, like it kind of got to a point where it was a bit unhealthy. Over the summer, I had pulled myself away, and then um, we kind of stopped being friends. And then at the end of the first year, I expressed my feelings, and so then we kind of agreed to be friends again and kind of form a relationship, especially as we were going to be living together next year. So Jack and Sam were in our house, the creepy house. And in the first week of second year, Sam was saying to me, "Oh," still being like, "Oh, what he's done to you is really bad." And then I think a week in, one of our other housemates pulled me up to her room and said, "Oh, I have something to tell you. Um, Tonight, Sam told me that he had been sleeping with Jack all of last year, and that they were in love, and um, basically that they were still together and in love." So I was obviously really upset. But then Sam had told our housemate that Jack was really in a bad place, depressed about it, because he was so conflicted about his sexuality, which is what I had thought. So he had said if he knows that everyone knows that we're together, I don't know, he'll go off the rails. I don't know what will happen. So no one can say anything to him. So I was then conflicted because I was still kind of cared about him. And then I was so angry that they'd kind of betrayed me, or well, Sam had betrayed me, because he had been the shoulder to cry on, saying what he's doing to you is so horrible, and he's leading you on, and you can tell that he likes you and you like him, and I feel so bad for you, and you can cry to me anytime. But then because we lived together, it was going to be very awkward. They were very, very close at this point. And so it was believable, the story.
that's a key word there, everyone, is believable. And what
Mm.
we're getting at here is we're building a story that we believed to be true. And unfortunately, I think what happened was we found out on, I guess the suspicion started, right? So we all started living together, which was horrible for Alex because, you know, you were still in love with Jack.
Mm.
And then you thought
Mm.
that
Yeah.
he was having this secret relationship, and
Yeah.
you're like, why can't I be the secret relationship?
Yeah. And then because I'd built a real resentment anyway before this, and then it was obviously 10 times because it was kind of like, you know, this was all happening. And then but then we were all really concerned about Jack's mental health, so we didn't want to expose the situation for fear that he was quite a vulnerable person, so we didn't want to expose the situation, so we kept it really quiet. And it was really hard for me to keep it quiet when I was so mad, but so I just ignored them, didn't talk to either of them. And it was kind of like we would be in the kitchen, but then Jack would still want to be friends with me, so I just kind of ignored it. And that was when it started becoming really toxic in the house.
It from there took quite a turn because there was already this toxic environment, but this is so I would say if you thought of like this whole series of events as a domino effect, like it all started when I paid the rent late.
Yeah.
And Sam had told us, he was like, look guys, I think it's just easier for me to pay if you guys transfer to me every month and I'll pay our rent. It's just easier that way. And so we were like, sure, we didn't really question it. And so when I transferred the rent to him a day late, he said to me, Jess, look, because you've done that, I've been charged a fee from the estate agents and
The late fee.
a late fee of like £250. And I was like, oh my God. So I paid it. And obviously as a student, that's there goes your whole year. So, and I was talking about it in the library to my friend because I was like, oh my God, can you believe this? And she was like, that's not a thing. And I was like,
No.
well, it is for our estate agent, clearly. And she was like, no, Jess, that's absolutely not a thing. Let's call them right now. And had she not have been so persistent, because I was like, well, yeah, of course it's real. Why else would it be? So I called the estate agent and I said, do you guys charge a late fee? And she said, so we never charge a late fee. And I'm really glad you contacted us. No one has paid your rent this entire year and we've been chasing. Reality shattered.
And you called me. I was on the bus, I remember. Because that was quite early on still. That was before Christmas.
It was.
In the first.
It was. And he had told us in the summer, because we had all like drawn sticks and I picked the biggest room. And that was an exact amount of £250 more than everyone for the whole year. And he had said over the summer that his mother had now passed away. So at this point, he said both of his parents were dead and this was going to be the main place he was living. And so I said, of course, like you take the bigger room, which meant like he would be paying £250 more.
Yeah.
And so when they said there's no late fee, and it just clicked in my head, he hasn't paid our rent. Text him, I was like, I'm going to be paying my rent from now on. Transfer me the £250 back and all of my rent. And everyone's like, Jess, give him a chance. I was like, no, something's off.
No, this is the thing as well. When he first started first year, he told us that his mum had died 2 years previously, and that's why he had been at a previous university and had dropped out and went traveling, because he had been, obviously his mum had died and he was distraught, which is how he connected with our other housemates who had also lost their dad, but all really felt for him. And then also he had told us that he had had a brother who had died of leukemia when he was, I think, 8 years old or something, a while back. So, you know, he'd had 2 people of his close family die. We were all very empathetic to that. So this was it when this kind of came out. And his dad had died that summer. We were all even more so like, oh God, he's had a really terrible, terrible time. So even the thing with Jack, that was another thing, is that why I didn't confront them or anything was because both of them were very vulnerable. So I was kind of like hands off. But then, as you say, with this thing as well, a lot of the people in our house were saying, oh, he's had obviously the worst time in the world. We can't kind of upset him even more, and we have to be on his side and be caring and considerate towards him. So you were met with people being like, you know, even if he has not paid it, he's probably forgotten, or he's probably just, that's not where his head's at. But obviously the penny had begun to drop for me to be like, he's not a nice person.
So at this point, the house is totally divided. We're drinking a bottle of wine in your room, probably like a 2-pound bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh my God, honestly, like this guy, if he's been lying to us about paying the rent, what else is he lying about? And then we secretly, we're like, I wonder if his parents are even dead. Like we said that. And we both felt bad for saying that. But then we kind of looked at each other and we're like, oh my God, hang on. We're like, is this actually all true? And we started laying out the facts. We were like, every time someone gets upset with him, all of a sudden someone's died in his life. Like I remember I had gotten upset with him about the rent then, like we just said. And then after that, he said, my friend's just had an abortion. She used to hang her. And it was dark. And I'm going through so much right now. So we noticed this pattern in his behavior of whenever someone was upset with him, he would seek empathy by saying something so tragic. And so we started thinking, you know what, this just isn't lining up anymore. And Alex did some detective work. Please, I still cannot believe how wise this was of you. Say what you did.
Well, so he was from very near where I grew up. So I knew the school that he went to, and I knew the kind of area that he went to. And so this was the kind of one of the key parts of the story, is that with both his parents dead, he had inherited the house, and it was empty. So then, so I looked in the phone book around the area, and there was one residence with his surname, which was quite an unusual surname. So with a phone number. So then we were like, well, should we call it?
It was one of those moments where we didn't put any thought into it. We were just like, oh my God, there's a number, let's call it. And we literally we didn't think about it. And so we just started calling, and all of a sudden this woman picked up, and Alex and I looked at each other and we're like, oh, because this was very just drunken suspicions, right? We were like, I bet his parents aren't even dead. And all of a sudden this woman picks up, and I was like, oh my God, Alex. And I was like, hi, do you have a son named Sam? And she was like, yes, who's calling? And oh my God, we freaked. He. And it was really dark and cold in the house, and he wasn't back yet. And it was I don't even know how to explain the fear, the sheer terror of who is he? And we started, we started going around the house being like, guys, we have something really horrible to tell you. I've literally just spoken to Sam's mother, who is supposed to be dead. And everyone was like, what the fuck? Who are we living with? Who is this guy?
And on the phone, she was saying, is he in trouble? What's wrong? And then, you just hung up.
And I was just saying things, and obviously me with my accent, right? So Sam already knew that I was kind of had suspicions about him. And so his mother clearly called him, was like, some girl with an American accent just called me and asked if I had a son. What's going on? Clearly, because then he came back at well past midnight and started throwing things around in the room. And I literally remember the sheer terror, because I was in the room next to him, and I was like, he's gonna fucking kill me.
Because he could get quite aggressive as well. When the whole thing with the rent happened, I was on a date with someone he knew, and he came up to me in the middle of a bar restaurant and then started shouting at me, at the top of his voice. So people were looking in the whole bar restaurant, and he was saying, do you believe, Jess, that I would steal money? And then I was like, well, she's my friend, and we're not really friends. And then he said, if you don't believe me, then you're against me, and how could you say that to me? And was very aggressive shouting. And I remember when I came home and I told 2 of our other housemates who were kind of on his side that he had done that, and they were really mad at him because that he had been shouting at me in the middle in public. I bring it up because this was adding to our fear at this time when he kind of came back and was throwing things around the room. he was quite an aggressive person, and he was very tall, very, you know, much larger than any of us, and older, so we were all very scared of him.
Yeah, good point that you mentioned that date you're on, because he showed a different side. He let that mask off for a
Yeah,
moment. And what was really interesting is when we did like the rent, the whole drama kicked off, he very much he went into saving reputation mode. And so he went around the entire like university and was like, if you're friends with Jess Burns, you're not friends
yeah,
with me. And
yeah.
I remember being like, I do not care. Like you literally are, I
This
was
is
like,
right and wrong.
there's right and wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and when he was throwing things around in his room, I think if we looked at like our texts from like, 9-10 years ago, you would see me texting Alex being like, oh, because we'd gone to bed at this point. We were like,
yeah,
this is fucked, but we do need to sleep. So we'd gone to bed, and he came back to the room next to me, started throwing things around. And I honestly, my gut feeling was like, he's going to kill me. I was like, I have literally pushed this entire domino effect going. I was like, I uncovered the rent. I've now figured out that everything he's told us is a lie, and he is going to silence me. And I remember texting everyone in the house being like, guys, please, he's pacing, because you could hear, because it was that old house. He was pacing outside my door. And I was so scared shitless. We had locks though, but I was so scared he was going
I
to
didn't have a
break.
lock.
You didn't. That was it. Yeah,
My
because you were
servants,
freaked.
yeah, my servant's room, I put a chair in front
Yes,
of the door.
that was
Yeah,
it. But isn't
yeah,
that crazy that you remember that, because we were that
yeah,
terrified that he would come in. And in the
yeah,
morning we woke up, and no one woke up to my text, like, and he did eventually go away. But in the morning
yeah,
we woke up, and I opened my door, and we then opened his, because he had left the door like a crack open, and there was a knife, just like a big, almost like a butcher's knife, like from the kitchen, just resting there. It felt like a message that was left for me. What's going through your head like that night?
just terrified, because that was a year and a half of crying to us being there for him, connecting with other people who'd lost people like you, and then also one of our other housemates who'd also lost their dad. So it was a real, if that's true, he is really twisted, because he had really connected with people, and it was really sad, but yeah, terrifying.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't think
yeah,
at the age we were, like, I just think we were so impressionable, and to go through that traumatic realization that you are literally living with a stranger, and a dangerous one.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so that morning was very, almost like, ominous, because he left
yeah,
his door like a crack open. So we all were like, where is he? So we eventually like went in, we saw the knife, and then we're like, what is that smell? And
yeah,
why are there scarves all over the floor? And
yeah,
do you remember that?
yeah. We'd lift the scarves up because we could hear flies underneath, lift it up, and there was rotting food,
Mm,
moldy food in the cupboard. I remember in his cupboard there was moldy food, and it was just stank, and it was just a real, because before he had been very, very clean, very meticulous about how clean he was
mm,
in first year,
mm,
and it was like a weird, and then it was like the facade was dropping of
mhm.
his character that he presented to us.
Yeah.
And then it was that morning that he told one of our other housemates that he said, it's really weird. Last night, my auntie got a call from someone with an American accent asking if asking for my parents. And then he said, my auntie said, no, they're dead. Why are you calling? And then they hung up, which is very interesting. All you literally said was, do you have a son named Sam? There was nothing about death. So
Mhm.
that's when we were even more new, because obviously we had got through to someone he knew, clearly,
Yeah.
and it wasn't his auntie.
Yeah. And so here's the scary part, guys. So, I mean, everything's scary, but when we went in there, we didn't just find mold. We found letters that
Oh,
were
yes.
love letters
Yeah.
that were from Jack. And so when we told Jack about what happened, and this was finally where Alex got to talk to Jack about his relationship with Sam.
He was like, I didn't write those. And it was
Pause for dramatic effect. I
Yeah.
didn't write those. So,
Yeah.
so Sam had written himself love letters from Jack. So clearly Sam was very mentally unwell. And like, I have sympathy for that now, but like
Yeah.
back then, like I was just so scared. And I still like for me, like that whole event was quite interesting because everyone, half the house literally hated me because they thought that, like because Sam kept filling their heads with like, oh, if you're friends with Jess, you're not friends with me, all this stuff. And even though once that was unveiled, sometimes you can't go back. Like, even though everyone then knew the truth, it was still like the damage was still done to our relationships. Like
absolutely, yeah.
He came in like a tornado and absolutely destroyed so many people.
You know, as you said, the relationships were damaged completely. And then with Jack, he was so everything he had said about how he's vulnerable and he's very, you know, his mental health isn't great was all true, and we all knew it to be true. So then this was devastating for him, and you know, and it was for us too. But then he then went home and was so angry because they were best friends, and he really up until that week he had thought they were like that, and turned out that he had been lying for like a year. And he told me that he said the things he was saying about you all of last year, he was saying you're crazy, that you're like, don't trust Alex, which was at the same time that he was saying to me, what Jack's doing to you is horrible, is so disgusting. How can you trust it? You can't trust him. So he was like a puppeteer trying to put wedges between all of us. And as you say, the relationships with our housemates were then just damaged, because me and Jack tried to form a friendship after that, but it was just that feeling of betrayal. And then, do you remember as well? So what I'd said earlier about how he had been at a previous university at Oxford, and one of our friends' course mates had said, "Oh, this guy Sam is going to be on your course," and he said, "I don't trust him. And then he said, why? And he said, no, just, you know, I've heard things about him and I wouldn't trust him." And then after this all came out, it kind of spread like wildfire across the campus. Everyone knew about it. And then this guy asked his friend that had been at Oxford with him, and he said that, oh, he lied about his parents dying to everyone. And he was, you know, thrown out of the uni basically to go and get help. So he had done it 3-4 years before, and then he'd done it again.
And so you're probably wondering, everyone, like, what happened next? So he actually left the university that day. Like, he left. What's interesting is after he left, we literally, Alex and I had to clear his room out. And that was vile. There was blood on the bed, and as we mentioned, it was disgusting. But we put everything into trash bags because, like, what else we're going to put it in? We put it downstairs, and he had to come collect it. And that was the last time I saw him. And I hid in the room. I was like, I'm not seeing him.
We were there together.
We were hiding, looking out the window because that's how terrified we were of him. And I still remember him wearing like this like cheetah or like leopard print shirt. Like, I remember it so well. And him leaving, and we thought, okay, our troubles are gone. He's out of here. Like, thank God. But unfortunately, like it just wasn't over. So what happened next was we slowly started to feel safe again. And I actually so I was supposed to go into third year. I ended up taking a year out. And so everyone went back to school and then graduated. But when they went back to school, Sam didn't come back. And it was well known because he started taking to like Twitter and all these places, clearly having like quite a mental breakdown, that he had been put into like a mental ward to get help. And what was it called? Do you remember?
The Priory.
Okay.
That was the thing, is that, after like wildfire, but then we were getting people coming up to us asking us what had happened, and it was Chinese whispers, and someone came up to me and said, "Is it true that he punched you in a restaurant?" Which was the story when he shouted at me. And then, and then it was like all these rumors, and I was, we were like, no, that didn't quite happen.
What was really
Yeah.
scary was, so I take a year out of uni, everyone graduated, and then I went back to finish my final year. And he came back to school. And I got the text from our old housemate being like, guys, he's back. And I remember exactly where I was on campus, and I was like looking around. I was like, oh my God, he's literally come back to like finish me off. I was like, he's back. And so I called the school and I was like, I don't feel safe. We've reported this to you last year. How can you let him come back? And the person I spoke to was so defensive. They were like, no one reported this to us. All this stuff. They're like, we had to let him back. And anyways, she said to us, look, what we need to do is Sam needs to apologize to you and we need to get you in a room. And I was like, absolutely not. I was like, I do not feel safe. And no offense, like, I don't need his apology. That would be for him, and I'm not ready yet. And I mean, I feel like I'm ready now that it's been like so long, but I was like, I'm not doing it. But the school said, they're like, you have to. And so I texted the whole house group. It was like,
we got in a group chat together, and we were all, none of us were even talking. We were all like, what? Absolutely not. He cannot, he can't do this. He devastated our whole lives. And these were all the people like Jack and the friends. Yeah. And then we were like, but then when you said they want to get us all in a room, and then we all said, absolutely not, we never want to see him again.
I asked you guys, I said, I don't feel safe being in the room, just me. And it's just anyone else, it's like, they don't get it. I was like, can you guys come back to campus? And you guys were, and I remember you guys were like, yes, I will be there for you. And then I got another call and the woman said, so we've had up to 10 people call saying they don't feel safe. So we have had to revoke him coming back to uni or something like that. And he wasn't allowed back.
Because Jack wrote a really long letter, I remember as well.
Is that what happened?
Saying how much Jack had written a really long letter, basically saying like how much he had emotionally traumatized him and basically like ruined his life. And I mean,
I had no idea. I thought it was just us, who were impacted, but there were so many more people, and they were and those were the people who were speaking up. There must have been so many more who were like, we don't feel safe. This cannot happen. So fast forward now, we're living in London, and we know he lives here. And one night, Alex got a call from him.
He called me, and it was really, really, I mean, obviously this is a complete coincidence, but it was a very scary moment because it was about 2 a.m. I was at my ex-boyfriend's house, and we had an argument, a very horrible atmosphere in flat. And then my ex lived right next to an overground station, and there was an alarm going off, which I'd never heard before or since, saying, you must evacuate the station immediately. You must evacuate the station immediately. And I woke up to that at about 2 a.m. And then, as you do, you wake up and you're a bit kind of shocked. And then I looked at my phone to see what time it was. And 1 minute before, I'd got a missed call from him. In my haze, I had, I felt that he had set this alarm off, why he called me that night. And that was terrifying.
So that was what's so scary about, like, it's never over and he's still roaming around. And I think
that was 6 years later. That was 6 years after.
6 years after. And so, bringing this story to an end here, like, that's our experience with Sam. And I think what I've really learned was gaslighting is so real. Like, someone can deny your reality so much to the point where you start to believe it. And the fact that he was able to con so many people, it just shows how naturally trusting, like, we are as a society. But for me, I'd say the key thing that genuinely helped was you have a gut instinct. And I followed that when I felt like something was wrong. And I honestly would say, always go with your gut instinct. And what they say is when you first meet someone, you should try and remember that moment and how you were feeling about it, because you listen and you judge based on your gut and your intuition, whereas afterwards you judge based on words and what people say to you. So you
Mhm.
should always try and think back to that. And I literally to this day would say, like, if you think something's off, it probably is.
Yeah, taught us the lesson to be not blindly trusting when someone is nice to you and someone is welcoming you and kind of being the older brother figure, you know, and kind of being someone that's in your life and there for you, and then they do something horrible to you. You know, when someone shows you who they truly are, then you need to believe them.
That one line there, when someone shows you who they are, believe it. And he didn't show us who he was until,
No.
and there were moments when the mask came off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in conclusion, everyone, I think I've done so much reading on sociopaths since, because it literally was so traumatizing. Apparently 1 in 23 people have sociopathic tendencies, which means people who lack empathy. And it is terrifying, which means there are, if you add up all your friends on Facebook, however many you have, do the math, 1 in 23. And that doesn't mean that someone's an actual sociopath. Like it just means they have like tendencies, which is, like I was saying, like the lack of empathy. And just be careful, because you just don't know what's out there. And I would say on this note, I feel like I make this mistake a lot. Do not share your location when you're there. We spoke about this on the show before. It is so dangerous because, like Alex said, he got a missed call. Why was he calling you? He wanted to know maybe where you were, what was, and had you had shared your location on Instagram at that time, who knows, maybe he would have tried to come find you. So just be safe, everyone, honestly, because there's a lot of Sams out there.
Yes, terrifying experience, but it brought us closer, which is good.
It did. It definitely did. But thank you so much for revisiting with me. Like, Alex, it is like, I don't know about you, I feel emotionally drained right now.
Yeah,
Again.
well, I know. Well, I think we've told the story maybe 3 or 4 times since, and every time it's like emotionally draining to talk about it.
Yeah. And it happened. It did. It happened, and it happened to us. And I like don't talk about it is because it's so unbelievable. It makes
Yeah.
me feel like a liar because how unfucking believable it is. But
Yeah.
this is our story, and I hope you enjoyed it and you'll be more cautious, everybody.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much,
Right,
Alex.
thanks, Jess.
Bye.
Bye.